of the NRC brand, gives his insight and thoughts on the world of comic books, gaming, tech, and media industries as the host of Neo Reality Collective. Experience a slew of regular episodes covering news and pop culture, along with reviews and editorial pieces showcasing the best and worst of our ever-expanding multimedia world.
Disney hates Star Wars, I must say. I mean, look, we could go ahead and talk about, how Disney wrecked the Star Wars universe for many, and I can also talk about how the fan base kind of wrecked Star Wars for many, how there was the whole gatekeeping stuff, there's the whole Legends continuity, there's the whole we hate the sequel trilogy, and don't get me wrong, the Force Awakens was a good alright. Last Jedi, the fact that I have to depend on the final film to make it make sense for me should say a lot about what I was feeling about that movie in that 2-hour review I made back on my old YouTube channel, Neo Reality Entertainment. And then Rise of Skywalker was basically, we learned nothing. And I'm not talking about the Disney Corporation, I'm talking about like the Star Wars characters as a whole. They had learned nothing from the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy. They did not learn the mistakes of the past. We just start back all over again. And it's a cascading, endless tide of misery and despair. So, yeah. But there was a chance. Turns out Adam Driver, the actor who played the one of the few great aspects of the story, Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, oh god, he had his own vision for what he wanted to do after episode 9 of Star Wars with the Kylo Ren Ben Solo character, where he revealed in an interview on the Associated Press, say, I was always interested in doing another Star Wars. He talked about in the Associated Press in an interview on Monday this week, I had been talking about doing another one since 2021. Kathleen Kennedy had reached out, and I always said, with a great director and great story, I'd be there in a second. I love the character, and I love playing him. And then from 2021 to, at some point, they went ahead. Adam Driver went ahead and teamed up with the director and writers, with some director and writer named Steven Soderbergh. I'm pretty sure I butchered that. I am terribly sorry. He had a story in mind with events after Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. Kathleen Kennedy and the writer named Scott Z. Burns of Contagion and The Bourne Ultimatum, so you know those are good films, and you know that was a good team up. They got involved in this production, and the idea was basically, let's resurrect Kylo Ren Ben Solo, and it was called The Hunt for Ben Solo, and Driver said it was really cool, but sadly it's no more because here's the thing, this is the one few occasions I can say it wasn't Kathleen Kennedy's fault, because they actually loved the idea, they understood what the angle was and where they were going with it, after they present the script to them, and then they went ahead and took it to Disney. Bob Iger and Alan Birmingham, they ultimately said no, and then their reasoning was actually the most dumbest reason possible. They said they didn't see how Ben Solo was alive. Okay, allow me to just point out, when I heard that line, I was like, Bob, I know you don't care about Star Wars, but do you really need to insult everyone's intelligence? Like, if I was in that meeting, being the big Star Wars nerd that I am, and he told me that what I pitched doesn't make sense because there is just no tactical way Ben Solo could still be alive after the events of Episode 9, and I would just go ahead pick up a book and list all the reasons why Ben Solo could still be alive or be brought back, and I could say, okay, I could think of like 20 different philosophies on that. We could use Sith alchemy, a cult of Sith lords who are trying to resurrect Kylo Ren but bring back Ben Solo, and they're trying to control him, and Rey has to try and save him from being under mind control this time around instead of being willingly followed because Luke was an idiot route. Yeah, I still hate that direction they went. Let's see. We could go with the world between worlds as a reason to bring him back. And like time travel, that thing that everyone thought was going to be the big payoff to when it was introduced in Rebels. And mostly it's just been connected to Ahsoka. And I'm just like, look, if you're going to introduce a very major cosmically changing, game-changing aspect like the world between worlds, you have to do something with it. And I would have loved if they just split the timeline in 3, where we get the Legends continuity, we get Disney's poorly optimized sequel trilogy timeline, and we get the Mandoverse to start fresh. Because this is just my take. I just don't see any optimism, so to speak, with handling the future of the Star Wars timeline in Rey's hands, or in Finn's hands, or in Poe Dameron's hands. I just don't care about them. I have no emotional connection to them. Any ideas they could have had to make them connectable was thrown away because people hated The Last Jedi. Colin Trevorrow was rejected of his pitch that would have at least respected the original and the prequel trilogy, with Coruscant, with Leia still being around. And yes, I get Carrie Fisher had passed away, so that idea was thrown out the window. But there was just so much ideas they could have went with to give us a more optimistic route. Heck, I was still bummed when I found out that the original plan was to give Rey a double-bladed lightsaber, and I'm just like, oh, you kidding me? That makes the most sense. That would have been awesome. And like I said, it would have made sense. But Disney, for whatever freaking reason, as much as people like to say J.J. Abrams did it or whatnot, I definitely still believe Disney wrecked the films themselves because they were so afraid to get the prequel reception that they ended up getting something worse. People love the prequels more than they love the sequel trilogy because they're so paranoid, and the mouse knows more than anything the fans would want or anything that the creators would have wanted to do. But like I said, when I had heard that they said that they just couldn't see how Ben Solo could still be alive, and I just listed several reasons why they should have done what they could have done. I can think of another. Let's see. You did Dark Empire poorly with Palpatine's return, and you explained in a freaking book, that he came back with cloning technology and he fused his spirit into it. Why not do that with Ben Solo, except actually say it was cloning technology? No, we can't because that would have been too repetitive? Oh, well, sorry. Just say that then. Or we could do what the old continuity did, like how Darth Krayt came back. He came back, he was killed off, and then he got resurrected through Sith alchemy. There was also the Darth Maul duplicate they made a Sith cult did to try and overthrow Darth Vader and Sidious in the Legends continuity. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the Legends continuity they could have easily sourced from. Or they could do what Troy Denning had proposed during Legacy of the Force, where he wanted to go ahead and bring back Anakin Solo, which would have been awesome, through Darth Tyus's abuse of flow walking. That would have been an interesting route. Or hell, bring in Abeloth. Like they've been teasing, like people have been thinking Abeloth is coming, that the next big threat for Star Wars is going to be Abeloth. You could have her being a primordial god, a bringer of insanity, to bring her in and do something that could resurrect Ben Solo for this story. But no, there's just no way Ben Solo's going to come back. There's just no way he could still be alive after what happened. There's just no way possible. That is so BS. Like, that line just infuriated me for some reason. It's just like, I'm a fan of Star Wars. Look, if they didn't want to do it, that's fine. But their argument, if they had a reason for it, fine. But the reasoning being so, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh yeah, lame. is something I just don't agree with. Like, it's just something I just can't bring myself to agree with, because it's just like I'm like, because by that logic, then half of the stuff that goes on in comics doesn't matter. At Marvel, I mean, like, it kind of doesn't at some times, because it's become less of a original comics universe to being a glorified advertiser for the MCU. Heck, the most infamous one being Kamala Khan, so they can kill her off, bring her back as a mutant, but they also have to keep the human origin they gave her back then. And everyone was still pissed off at how they handled it, instead of just letting it be natural. Or hell, they could have killed her off during the Dark Web event, and well, then wait a year to bring it back, but instead they brought it back within a month. So, yeah. F us, right? But, yeah. And we already had heard Adam Driver talk about how he had a different vision for Darth Vader, for Kylo Ren, where Kylo Ren starts off conflicted and then becomes committed to the dark side, whereas in the original, Darth Vader starts off being confident and then ultimately becomes conflicted at the end. But, like, that's a completely different subject we could go with. But it just bugs me how they went with that direction and what they did. It's just, I don't really agree with any of it. I'm still, like, I'm not even interested in watching The Mandalorian Grogu, because they already confirmed that it's not taking place in another timeline after season 3 of The Mandalorian confirmed that, yes, we're still doing the sequel trilogy, we're still committed to that BS, instead of starting fresh and trying to split the timeline off. They had an opportunity to do so with the second season, and then they blew it with the Book of Boba Fett. And then there's this whole Rey Jedi Order movie that's been delayed constantly. I'm not excited for that. I'm not gonna watch it, even when it comes out on Disney Plus and whatnot. I'm just not interested in the direction of the Star Wars universe at this point. I just keep going back and either looking at the past stuff that was good, or looking at the Legends continuity, or just make up my own stories with everything that came before. It's just, or just read stories that resolve all the Legends stuff that was never fixed up. Like, that was one of my other big gripes. Like, I would have loved if they just had, like, I think a lot of people would have been less divisive with Star Wars. This is just my opinion. I know I'm going off track here, but I would have been alright had Disney, after they announced The Force Awakens, instead of instantly rebooting the Star Wars timeline, they should have waited. They should have announced that they were going to reboot it, but before that, they wanted to wait with new material after when they got The Force Awakens, and when they had charted out a plan for the sequel trilogy, or at least a vague point A to point B to point C plan, like the original trilogy operated with, where they were like, Vader starts off here and Vader ends doing this, and we just fill in the blanks as we go along the way. But we have a clear beginning, middle, and end here. But had they done like a wait between Disney buying it and the Star Wars Force Awakens release, and let the Legends stories end on a optimistic note, like give it an ending that it had rightfully earned after all this time, for providing us Star Wars fans with the whole, with filling in the gaps that people missed, since there was no more films at the time and all we had were TV shows and all that, and Star Wars Underworld was pretty much dead in the water, sadly. It would have been awesome. It's just so disappointing how badly botched this whole thing got. Like, there's been some good stuff. Andor's pretty damn awesome. I gotta finish watching that. There's also the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. Those were phenomenal seasons. And then everything went downhill for many. And let's see, there's some good moments in Ahsoka. It wasn't an overall great show, but it was still a good show. In fact, and Rebels was... I'm not even going to go into that. Like, here's the thing. I'm very mixed about Rebels. Like, I like the last half of season 4, but I didn't really... And I like the Ahsoka episode. I like Twilight of the Apprentice, but I just didn't vibe with the show overall. Like, I like some of the characters, but it's just not for me. It was just not for me. And then there was the whole Clone Wars Season 7. They brought that back. So that was awesome. And I love the Darth Maul Ahsoka fight. That was the most best part of it. But it's just one of those things where I'm just like, I wish we had gotten an ending with the Legends timeline and the whole Ben Solo storyline they had planned, that Adam Driver and Steven had planned, would have been phenomenal. It would have given me some more optimistic hope with the Star Wars timeline if they had went with it. But with the way things are going now, I'm just not interested. I'm just really not. And it's just one of my beliefs that Disney really does not get Star Wars in my eyes. Like, I'm not saying, and I have my disagreements with Kathleen Kennedy. I don't particularly like her storytelling style, her way of how the Star Wars universe should go. And we all know Bob Iger backstabbed George Lucas because George Lucas was told he was going to be on a consulting basis, or his treatments would be respected, that he had pitched and written up for the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and then they just instantly tossed it away and got rid of him. And look, I get George Lucas has made his peace. Like, they had their own vision. I had my own vision. I executed my vision how I wanted it, but it didn't go the way I had hoped with Disney. But I've moved on with my life, and that's all you can do at this point. Fine. Would I travel back through time to stop George Lucas selling? I'm pretty sure someone would. But he's made his peace with it, and he has said some positive things about Star Wars under Disney. I mean, like, he doesn't have much nice things to say about the sequel trilogy. I mean, like, I think he liked The Last Jedi because they at least tried to be different instead of repeating the same story of Episode 4 like the first film did. But yeah, it's just like, I just feel like Disney doesn't care because they just want money out of this, and I get it. They're a corporation, they're not supposed to care and whatnot. They're not really the creators, they're just the corporate executive suits. And fine, they don't have to, but at least try to provide an actual reason instead of say, there's no way Ben Solo could still be alive after that, even though we just told a story where Palpatine came back, and we have a whole bunch of material we could work with the past stuff that goes ahead and explains that there were characters who could be resurrected, time travel, we could do this, we could do that, we could use flow walking, we could use Abeloth as an excuse. Like, you could do all this. Hell, we could probably use the Yuzon Vaughn at this point. It would have been nice if we had gotten that, though. It would have been nice if we got the Yuzon Vaughn running around. It would have been nice to see them on live action status. But that's a different subject altogether. But yeah, this was basically, I just need to get this out of the way. I know I've been gone for a long while. It's just been really tough for me this last half of the year. And there's this whole shutdown we're going through, but I don't really want to get into that. I'll see y'all again next time. This is your host, Eric Brown of Neo Reality Entertainment and hosting of Neo Reality Collective. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Check out other content on YouTube. Stay tuned for this last outro. I'll see y'all again next time. Peace and take care. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see y'all again soon in the future. Peace.
And that was our latest edition of Neo Reality Collective. Be sure to follow and support NRE creator Eric Brown on Twitter and YouTube. Check the links in the description below, and we'll see you all next time.